South Africa is the most race-regulated country in the world is an objective, provable fact. Trying to fix human rights abuses in the past with human rights abuses in the present is a fundamentally wrong idea. There's no wrong implementation of a good idea here. It's a wrong idea no matter how you implement it.
Yeah.
Piet Kroukamp, a few years back, he wrote, and I quote, "South Africa would be a better place without Afrikaners." That's his words verbatim. And now he's writing a letter very proudly saying, I'm as an Afrikaner. Afrikaners write X, Y, and Z. But a few years ago, he said the cultural group that he's now pretending to write on behalf of should not exist, and in his words, anyone calling themselves an Afrikaner is probably a racist.
Yes. Now he's calling himself one. Well, it's a shift from I'm not an Afrikaner, I have resigned from Afrikanerdom, to I am Afrikaner because I want to change what it means to be an Afrikaner.
And a lot of these letters are just making the point of you clearly have never had to explain to your child that you didn't make the team because you have the wrong skin color. You've clearly never been rejected from a job and been told you have the wrong skin color. Mm-hmm. You've clearly never had to console a loved one who was traumatized by a farm attack. You've clearly never had to experience these problems. Otherwise, you would not be telling people these problems don't exist, get over it. You're actually quite privileged and you're living a fantastic life. What are you complaining about? No, we're not going to stop talking about it. We're not going to shut up about it. We're going to write more reports on it. We're going to make more documentaries on it. We're going to make more social media posts on it. We're going to put up more banners about it. We're going to speak about it at more conferences to more people in the international community and in South Africa, because these issues do exist.
Ernst van Zyl, welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, well, nice to be back, Aaron. So I have to put on my English hat now. We've had some very interesting conversations in Afrikaans about the year that was, but now I think we can have the same conversation just for our audience as well.
Yes, absolutely. So there's actually a lot to talk about. I have here the report that you wrote and just published or is about to publish, entitled The World Must Know 2025, and there's a lot of different sections in this report about what's happening in South Africa. But let's just start with a broad overview. It has been an exceptionally busy and eventful year, 2025 so far. What stood out for you?
Yeah, it's a year that's not even over yet, and it's like that quote or that saying that there are decades where years happen and years where decades happen. So sometimes it feels like some years are full of happenings, and then other times it feels like nothing is happening. 2025 has definitely been a year where decades have happened.
It's definitely a historic year for South Africa and in our lives, largely because of the Trump administration and the actions of the US government, the response of the South African government, but then also the response of the media, which was quite remarkable. Yeah. The extent to which, and it's interesting, again, it's not just journalists, but it's usually newspaper editors or online publication editors who very actively vilify and attack those who criticize what the South African government is doing and very actively try to portray the opinions and the statements of the Trump administration or those who criticize South Africa as dishonest or misled or populist and so forth.
I mean, now recently with this whole happening of Solidariteit putting up that banner exposing just pretty much telling the truth, saying South Africa is the most race-regulated country in the world is an objective, provable fact. It's a fact that the ruling party, the ANC, sometimes celebrates and sometimes denies. Sometimes they celebrate the fact that we have so many of these quote-unquote redress or transformation laws, and other times they say, no, these race laws don't exist. What are you talking about? So what we've seen surrounding that as well now recently is that billboard was taken down in a blatant, just censorious act, desperation and panic by the South African government to cover up the truth. But the response from many newspaper editors and journalists, people writing columns and opinion pieces has been to praise the government for not just for this censorious action, but then calling those people who simply take up the stance, don't discriminate against our children, they're calling them traitors. Like, how can you have such
liars?
And liars. How can you have such a treasonous point of view as to say, like, don't discriminate against my children based on their skin color? I mean, that's literally the line that they're taking. And the same goes for farm murders and kill the Boer. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do with this report as well, and we can get into it. But the whole thing around kill the Boer as well, it's such a simple demand. Don't chant about murdering us based on our identity. And that's seen as, quote unquote, treasonous and attack against the sovereignty of South Africa, whatever.
It's not the chanting that is treasonous. It's saying that people should stop chanting that is treasonous.
It's saying don't chant about murdering farmers and people based on their identity. And the same goes with farm murders. I mean, the stance of Solidarity and AfriForum, I know you as well, on farm murders is just give the issue, address the issue in a way that it deserves. Like, this is a unique crime phenomenon that deserves a unique counter strategy. That's not a radical stance.
Yeah.
And then the response is, stop being such a far-right extremist with these extremist stances. And that applies for every single issue that's being raised in criticism of the government.
So let's talk about this notorious letter, the Afrikaner letter or declaration that was published by about 44 people. Almost all of them are academics or journalists, professors in different fields.
Not a single farmer signed that letter. I find that very telling.
Interesting, although a lot of the letter is about the farmers and the reality that farmers face. And so the main argument is that they reject the actions of the Trump administration. They concede that there are some problems in South Africa, but again, the problems are not the ideological framework, it's the implementation thereof. So yes, unfortunately, there's some corruption and some problems, but what they seek to achieve is actually something that ought to be supported.
And the problem, a large chunk of the problems that they list are outside of the ANC's control, like the legacy of apartheid. It's still this ghost haunting South Africa, and it has nothing to do with the 30 years of ANC misrule. It's still just it's letting the ANC off the hook. And I mean, a guest that you've had on, Professor Koos Malan, has had a scathing criticism of this stance. I mean, his one letter, or he had a letter that he wrote where he says you're pretty much giving the ANC a get out of jail free card with this type of reasoning, with this type of rhetoric. You're saying it's nothing to do with the ANC, it's nothing to do with the failings of their worldview and their policies. It's all to do with things that are outside of the ANC's control, outside of the ANC. And nowhere is there a moral problem with what a moral stance being taken against what the ANC is doing or their policies. Nowhere do these lapdogs of the ANC take any stance where they say this policy is wrong or this thing that the ANC says is false. They always just say, well, there's some kinks in the system, there's some glitches, there's some bugs in the system, like corruption or, as you said, mismanagement. Things, the implementation is just being done wrong. No, the recipe itself is wrong. The foundational, the ideological foundations of these policies are wrong. For example, trying to fix human rights abuses in the past with human rights abuses in the present is a fundamentally wrong idea. There's no wrong implementation of a good idea here. It's a wrong idea no matter how you implement it.
Yeah. What's remarkable to me is the authors of the letter, their response to the criticism that they've been getting. And it seems to me that the strongest argument or argument that they use most frequently is that the people who criticize them are very offensive. So people say very nasty things about them. People call them traitors and so forth. And then part of the argument that I've seen a few times is people say horrible things about us and they say it on the social media pages of certain leaders in our community. They don't say who they are, and those people allow it. So in other words, the criticism towards, for example, the leaders of AfriForum and Solidarity is that someone has commented on a Facebook page of Solidarity or AfriForum and has not that wasn't deleted, or it wasn't deleted soon enough. And so they get very angry about people insulting them, but they insult the people that disagree with him. But there's an interesting...
Not just that, they want to censor the people that disagree with them. I mean, Max du Preez, one of the signers of that letter, was celebrating the fact that Solidarity's very legal banner exposing race laws was removed.
Was taken down.
And he's cheering with Panyaza
Yeah.
Lesufi, the ANC cadre. So, I mean, the relationship there is so clear. I mean, well, firstly, the letter that was signed was then exposed by Rapport, was written by a state representative, a representative of the South African government. So the origin of the letter itself that's pretending to be this organic thing is actually the government itself.
Yeah.
It's state propaganda being signed by useful idiots in the sense of what that term was used in the Soviet Union, not just in common language. People that are being led by the nose to actually serve a government agenda. And everywhere, isn't it strange that these people who protest so much by saying, no, I'm not in the pocket of the ANC, I'm not trying to make excuses for the ANC, every single piece of propaganda that they produce is always in some way favoring the ANC's very moral foundations and ideas that are driving their policies. They might, as you said very rightly, they might criticize some kinks in the system, some glitches like corruption or people mismanaging funds or not implementing properly, but they will never...
This policy wasn't implemented the way it ought to be.
Yes, there was a wastage of money, or there was money stolen while a good idea was being implemented. Good idea in very fat quotation marks.
Yes.
But they will never ever criticize the moral foundations of what's being done. And I think that's where the chief failing comes in, especially now. I think there's a massive moral failing coming in when you try to pretend to speak on behalf of a group of people who you yourself believe should not exist. I mean, one of the people who now claims to have written the letter in a very defensive manner, now that it's been exposed, it's actually the government that wrote the letter, Piet Kroukamp. A few years back, he wrote, and I quote, "South Africa would be a better place without Afrikaners." That's his words verbatim. And now he's writing a letter very proudly saying, I'm as an Afrikaner. Afrikaners write X, Y, and Z. But a few years ago, he said the cultural group that he's now pretending to write on behalf of should not exist. And in his words, anyone calling themselves an Afrikaner is probably a racist.
Yes. Now he's calling himself one. But there was an interesting shift there, because many of those people have in the past rejected Afrikaner identity, have resigned from Afrikanerdom and so forth.
Or even framed Afrikaner identity as something inherently evil and bad.
And an interesting thing happened where a lot of them have now embraced Afrikaner identity, but under certain preconditions. So they embrace it because they have a problem with it.
Yes.
And that's the recurring theme in all of their claims is, actually, I don't like the idea of being an Afrikaner. I despise what it represents or what I associate with being an Afrikaner, but I am one, and I declare being one as a sign of protest. So that it's a shift from I'm not an Afrikaner, I have resigned from Afrikanerdom, to I am Afrikaner because I want to change what it means to be an Afrikaner.
But it's a phenomenon as old as the Bible itself. It's an ancient phenomenon it's so ancient, this phenomenon, that we have every single culture in the world almost has cautionary tales, jokes, and sayings about this phenomenon. I mean, the ancient Turkish saying goes, when the axe came to the forest, the people welcomed it because at least the handle was one. The trees welcomed the axe because at least the handle was one of them. The wooden handle, And I mean, every single culture has cautionary tales and sayings about this phenomenon. It's going to be with us until the end of time. It's part of human nature, because the temptation to put yourself out there as a quote-unquote critic of your own people, but only using your identity as a weapon or as a club to hit your own people with over the head is something that's as old as the Bible itself.
Yeah. I want to take a moment to thank you for watching and following the content on this channel. And I also want to encourage you to like this video and to subscribe to this channel to ensure that our audience is broadened. But there's an interesting thing happening here where they get accused by the people, you could say, by ordinary Afrikaners of being traitors. And they accuse Afrikaners they accuse their own people of being backwards and dumb and unintelligent and so forth. So it's this old thing, the classical thing about theory versus experience. People who live in the real world, who experience certain things, and then you have the professors and the academics who have a theoretical frame of reference on how the world ought to work, and then they criticize those who don't agree with him as being backwards, or as they put it, not being progressive.
they view the common people, or at least their folk, the common people of their nation, as stupid and dumb and unenlightened, as sick, and they view themselves as enlightened and smart and intelligent as the doctors that are going to save and cure these people of their backwards views. I mean, they unironically refer to themselves as the verligtes, as the enlightened, and they unironically refer to the common people as verkramptes, as people that are backwards.
Yeah.
It comes back to that comment earlier about not a single normal person signed that letter. I mean, a farmer, a plumber, electrician, a teacher, someone who's just out there living their life trying to get by. It's all people, literal diversity experts, ideological consultants, all these people living in these bubbles, but they don't live in the real world. And then when their bubble collides with the real world, and they realize, they're on the cusp of realizing they're in a bubble, they lash out and they say, no, it's actually us who represent the common man and you who are a fringe group. Well, it doesn't seem like that from any indication. It seems like, I think it was Connie Mulder from Solidariteit who also pointed out that, well, he asked the question to himself and then on a public platform, why are Afrikaners so angry about this latest stunt? And he came to the conclusion because what we were seeing here is Afrikaners who are living very privileged lives, shielded from racial discrimination of the government, who are secure in their positions, who don't have to worry about their positions being lost or them being demoted or losing out on a promotion or losing out on employment because they have the wrong skin color. They are secure in their positions, academics, analysts, diversity consultants, whatever, coming into the existence or into the world of those who are being discriminated against, those who are the subject of a lot of these discriminatory policies of the government, and telling them, get over it. It's not real. Connie uses the example of us normal Afrikaners are trudging through the mud every single day of our lives, struggling to get through. And then these enlightened folk outside of the mud come to just show up and say, have you ever considered that the mud actually doesn't exist and you're not in the mud? Have you ever thought about that?
Or what about those people over there?
What about those people who are deeper in the mud? How can you really complain? How can you be so arrogant to try and get out of the mud and pull people out of the mud if there are other people who are even deeper in the mud? That's what they're arguing. And it's such a detached position to take, and that's why Afrikaners are so angry. Because I mean, if you're, I was very much enjoying reading the many letters to Die Burger, just ripping these people apart. The Geleentheids-Afrikaners, the Afrikaners on occasion when it's politically expedient. And a lot of these letters are just making the point of, you clearly have never had to explain to your child that you didn't make the team because you have the wrong skin color. You've clearly never been rejected from a job and been told you have the wrong skin color. You've clearly never had to console a loved one who was traumatized by a farm attack. You've clearly never had to experience these problems. Otherwise, you would not be telling people these problems don't exist, get over it. You're actually quite privileged and you're living a fantastic life. What are you complaining about? It's this weird psychological phenomenon where these people think, because I'm fine and I'm not being discriminated against, everything in my life is perfect, everyone else, I'm the standard for everyone else around me. All our other Afrikaners must also have a perfect life. So why are they complaining, these backwards idiots?
Yeah.
That's literally their standpoint.
So let's take one step back to the broader issue of the you could say the narrative on South Africa, because that became a buzzword this year. What was remarkable about the White House meeting, and we still see that today, is how a lot of people in the South African government, and also you could say in the broad ideological elite in South Africa, they respond to the criticisms by just stating that it's not true. They don't respond to the actual facts. They would just say there are no race laws in South Africa.
To quote Julius Malema from a previous Twitter post of his, deny, play the race card if you have to, end quote.
That's exactly it. So when the Trump administration, for example, says we're concerned about the race laws in South Africa, the response is not, yes, but They say the response is there are no race laws. What are you talking about? And we've seen this with Ramaphosa as himself. When he was confronted about farm murders, his response was, there are no farm murders.
Literally, there are no farm murders. Not, it's a complicated issue or the numbers aren't as high as you'd believe. Like, no, this problem does not exist. There's no other violent crime phenomenon in South Africa that the president denies exists. What would the response be if Ramaphosa went on an international platform and said there's no gender-based violence in South Africa, there's no gang violence in South Africa, there's no political assassinations in South Africa, there's no cash and transit heists in South Africa? Every single one of those examples would be met with immense outrage. People would be out of their minds. But if you say there's no murdering of farmers or white farmers in South Africa, there's no land grabs in South Africa, crimes that you can just look up, they're real, then not just do people ignore those types of blatant lies, well, not people, the people, not people in general, specifically the comment class, the people that are the PR wing of the government, but they write editorials defending him. Pieter de Tooy, the deputy editor of News 24 at the time, I'll never forget it, after that comment, rushed to write a piece titled Killing of Whites, comment, what the president meant. Not, this is lies and here's why, or fact check the president. No, here's what the president meant. That's not what a journalist does. That's what a PR company does. And it's just example after example.
It's really remarkable. And I wonder why this is happening. And we spoke a little bit about this before the interview as well. But there seems to be a shallowing happening with among what used to be the intellectual class, or is still regarded as such, where it's not as if, it seems to me, that these people are not guided by a well-defined ideology with certain thinkers and certain sources and certain books that they reference, as was the battle of ideas 10 or 20 years ago. It seems to me that there's just almost an ideological deterioration that has happened.
It's just vibes now.
Yeah, it's just about vibes. Yes. How do you feel about certain issues?
I don't feel this is true. It doesn't feel true. Like, what you're describing there is not exaggeration. I've seen this argument being made. It's like Solidarity or AfriForum or Ernst van Zyl or Kali Kriel says X, Y, and Z, but this doesn't match the narrative, so therefore it's not true. The narrative is South Africa doesn't have race laws. So when AfriForum says South Africa has race laws, that can't be true because the narrative says they aren't. Not, well, here's proof that South Africa doesn't have race laws, or here's proof that what AfriForum is saying is wrong. Like, no, this does not, what AfriForum or Ernst or Solidarity is saying is not compatible with the vibes. Therefore, I can dismiss it based on the vibes.
So Barton van Staden, who did this race law project, also speaks about the vibes. He says discrimination against white people, or race laws against white people, is good vibes, and race laws against black people is bad vibes.
And that's all you have to know.
Yeah, and you don't. That's all you need to know. You don't need to. Don't need any further insight into the matter. It's determined by vibes.
Misinformation is a synonym for bad vibes.
Yes.
What you're saying is based on bad vibes.
Yeah. And that's the new buzzword, is misinformation, is accusing people of spreading misinformation.
Back in my day, and I'm not even that old, we just called people liars.
Yeah.
So like, why can't we do that anymore? Why does it have to now be disinformation, misinformation? It makes it sound all academic and intellectual, but it's not based on anything. Just if you think someone's telling a lie, call them a liar. Say it's not true. Say what you're saying is false, and here's why.
Yeah. So okay, this brings us then to the report, and the question is, what do we do about this? So I've read the report. I think it's great. So there's several sections, which is it's about the number of race laws. There's a section on that. There's a section on private property rights being under attack. There's a section on the deterioration of the human rights situation, with especially reference to Kiel the Boer and so forth. Anti-minority rhetoric. There's a section on the minority language of Afrikaans, in particular, being under attack through, for example, the Bella Act, and minority heritage, monuments and statues and so forth. And so it's a great sort of summary, and we'll put the link to the report in the description where people can read it. But why this report, and what do you want to do with it?
So it's not the first of its kind. There's been the World Must Know 2020 and a World Must Know 2022. You had a very big influence on the first two as well.
Yes.
So you know exactly the structure, how the research is done, what the goals are of it. But specifically for the audience that might not know, the World Must Know reports of AfriForum are published, researched and published for the exact reasons that we've been discussing now. For the reasons that there are still people in South Africa that claim these issues don't exist, they're not real, get over it, they don't stop talking about it, please stop talking about it, please stop talking about it, the vibes aren't right, it's negative vibes. No, we're not going to stop talking about it. We're not going to shut up about it. We're going to write more reports on it. We're going to make more documentaries on it. We're going to make more social media posts on it. We're going to put up more banners about it. We're going to speak about it at more conferences to more people in the international community and in South Africa, because these issues do exist. So the World Must Know 2025 is simply the continuation of that tradition of AfriForum of bringing up, publishing these reports that detail specifically those issues that affect minority communities in South Africa, and specifically those issues that the government and their allies deny exist. So you've listed now the issues there. And we're going to be, well, firstly, for those that want to go read it, they can either in the description of this video, or they can go to www.theworldmustknow.co.za. In Afrikaans, it would be www.diewereldmoetweet.co.za. And you can be the warrior for truth. You can help by downloading this report and spreading it everywhere. We are the media now. You can actually help the world realize what's happening in South Africa, and that these things are not misinformation. They're not just lies as they're being. These issues aren't just imaginary. They're real, and every single claim made in this report is backed up by at least one source. So you can't say, well, they just made this up, or here's an independent source where you can find this information. Take it up with that source if you think they are spreading lies. So you're going to see those sources are highly regarded and very bulletproof, so good luck with that. But when it comes to all of these issues, none of them are just, well, I heard from a friend that this happened, or I saw it in a dream. Like, no, these things are... You can link them to real evidence of them existing. And not a single claim in that report is vibes based. Not a single claim in that report is, well, I feel this to be true, or my heart tells me this to be true. Every single claim in that report is backed up. Here's the evidence. Here it's happened. Here's the date of where this happened. Here's who said this. Here's who, where, when, and why.
Yeah.
And we're going to be taking that report international, spreading it to all these contacts of ours internationally, and our supporters are going to help us spread it as well. That's been a major component. I think that's something in 2025 a person or a collective of people that don't get enough credit. A lot of organizations and individuals with big social media followings get a lot of credit for getting the truth out there about South Africa. But the people that don't really get a lot of credit is the normal people who spread episodes like this, who spread reports like this, who share this true information with people out there in the world. All those conversations that happen behind closed doors, around dinner tables, at private events that we don't even know about, that might be shaping how people perceive South Africa and Afrikaners going forward. I think that made a massive difference, and it's done by millions of anonymous people that you don't even know the names of.
So to round off, AfriForum especially has had a lot of attention and traction this year. If someone who's only vaguely aware of AfriForum were to come to you and say, what is AfriForum's solution? What is it that AfriForum does? What would the short summarized answer to that be?
So AfriForum is the largest civil rights and community-based solutions organization on the African continent. And also, it is an organization born out of the idea that we can't rely on party politics to solve our problems, especially not as minority communities in South Africa. Party politics has failed minority communities in South Africa for decades now. So there has to be an alternative approach. That's not us saying don't go vote or reject party politics. Still go participate, but just realize that you're doing the bare minimum. When you go stand there in line and vote, you're doing the bare minimum, level one of bringing about change. while a lot of people look at that saying, I've done my part. Like,
Yeah.
no, you haven't. You've done the very, very minimum of what you should be doing. Unfortunately, yes, that is unfair. I wish we lived in a world and in a country where you didn't have to go the extra mile, getting involved in your community, going the extra mile to bring about change, that you can just depend on the government to bring about all of this change. But that's not the world we live in. That's not the country we live in. And we're sitting on the Titanic, and you have only two choices. You can go sit in the corner and cry about it, saying, this is unfair. I bought a ticket for a safe trip. Well, okay, you can do that, but I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to be working together with those people who have a plan, building life rafts, making sure we can find a solution to this problem. As it's this idea that if I can just describe the problem, it's going to solve it. That's not going to work. It should be important. It's important to identify a problem, but you have to accompany it with, and now this is what we're going to do about it. And that's AfriForum's philosophy: is we identify the problems, but we also provide, and here's what we're going to do about that problem.
Well, Ernst van Zyl, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll look forward to having you back on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Ernst. Looking forward to it.
If you would like to support this channel and the work that we are doing at Lex Libertas to work toward a more sustainable and a more viable political dispensation for South Africa, I would like to encourage you to sign up as a contributor by clicking on the link in the description.